And we are live. Hi, folks. This is the vBrownBag. I'm going to go ahead and put our faces on here. Hi, I'm Damien. I'm with the vBrownBag. Joining me is my co-producer, Chris Williams. And on the top right is our guest for today, Mr. Justin Garrison.
Garrison.
Sorry,
I didn't spell it wrong.
You know
it's
what?
all right.
Wow. I saw Garrison. I said Harrison. You know, sometimes the mouth and the brain don't connect.
You don't need the Mick Garrison either. It's all right.
Justin O'Shaughnessy.
Woody Harrelson. What? No.
So he is going to be joining us today to talk about API-driven Linux. And before we do that, I would like to very quickly figure out how to change the slide over to here. So you can join us online. We are at vBrownBag on most of the socials. On the Twitter place, we're at vBrownBag. Blue Sky, we're vBrownBag.com. We're also on Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So you can find the show, the most common show host socials there on the right. And that is us. So please feel free to reach out, join the show. It's free to come on. And if you got something cool to show, we would love to have you. So there we have it.
Just watch.
Then how did I get here?
Yes. So how are y'all doing? How's the week going?
Well, as you can see, I am not in my regularly appointed area. I am at the Red Hat conference, which this year was in Boston. Is in Boston. And because my company as everyone knows, I work for HashiCorp. And as everyone knows, as some people know, IBM purchased HashiCorp. And as many more people know, IBM also purchased Red Hat. So I am here to play with all of the folks on the Red Hat side that do what I do and figure out where we can start doing fun conversations and creating content around Terraform plus Ansible better together and OpenShift plus Vault better together. All of the I've been playing with demos and Instruct Labs and all kinds of things this year or this conference. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Awesome. How about you, Mr. Justin?
I saved my voice for the show.
Oh, great. How about you, Justin?
I'm in SoCal and it's getting hot. So I'm just trying to keep the AC going and stay inside right now.
Yeah, I hear you. I am in Austin, Texas or close to it. And it's every year, everyone is surprised when summer arrives. Oh, doesn't it seem early? Oh, I'm not ready for this. And it's
I didn't know the thermometer went that high.
We never are. Spring is only a short while, and then it's summer, AKA the time without football, which is a very dark time in my life.
Oh,
let's branch out to some other sports. It'll be okay. Did you know there's other sports that have things that happen?
There's only American football. Sorry, that's all.
So opinionated.
I do like attending baseball, hockey, those sorts of things live. Just watching it on TV isn't as healing to me, So, anyways, what have y'all been doing with AI lately? We usually try to tap into that just real quick, just to see what folks are doing with AI.
Justin, you go first on this one.
I had this realization yesterday where someone, I don't remember who it was, but someone was trending saying that you go to bed and you'll ask the AI to do a bunch of stuff for you, right? And you'll wake up and it'll all be done,
yeah. Was that
right?
the one
plan my kid's birthday? Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? First of all, if you don't want to plan the birthday, you don't want to go to the birthday, right?
Yeah.
At some point, you don't have to have a birthday party. It is okay to not have a birthday party if you don't have the time to invest to plan it, because you show up and the kid's like, did you plan any of this? No. Then I don't want to be here either, right? Part of the benefit of something like that is the time investment of, hey, let's actually be interested in this for a little while. And I feel like a lot of the AI right now is shifting your attention. And they say I can only pay attention to this when I want to. And last night I almost rage wrote a blog post that was titled "Attention is all you have." Right? The whole point of life is attention. You are what you pay attention to. And if you're not going to pay attention to that thing before it happens, you're not going to pay attention during it. And you know what? It's not going to be fun. And so I'm coming to this point where I feel like AI, or at least the agentic promise of AI, is basically what I did with a VCR in the 90s. when I said, when I'm not home, record this movie for me, right? Like I would go through the TV guide, I would find the movie I wanted to see for that week, I would program it into the VCR, and I'd say, now when I'm ready to watch the movie, I don't have to go by the TV guide schedule. I can time shift that, and my attention can shift to another time. And I had this realization yesterday. I'm like, all we have is attention. As human beings on this earth, attention is what we can offer to someone.
It's the most valuable commodity. I mean, that's what all of these platforms are fighting for, is our attention.
Yeah, exactly. And then AI is coming in here saying, like, guess what? You can push that attention aside and you can do it whenever you want. And I'm like, actually, I still only have this amount of attention in the day, and I'm just going to be more choosy about where I'm spending my attention. And so I'm starting to ignore a lot of the promises and the things that they're saying. Look at all this cool stuff. I'm like, I actually don't care for a piece of software that might run a program in the background, because I don't want it to do action on my behalf. I don't trust it. I'm not going to do that stuff. And I want the benefit of actually investing my time in knowing, hey, I plan this party. I hope you like the cake because I picked it out. I went and tested it somewhere. Like there's more, I get more just value out of knowing that I put work into something, right? Like just not doing any work is not rewarding. At some point, I want to spend the time and put the attention in, so I get rewards out of it too. Yeah.
So you're not like pro, the AI is going to watch my pesky child take their first steps, or tell my wife I love her because I'm too busy to do that otherwise. Like,
I mean, of all the things in this life, like I love my kids the most. And like, why would I want something else to do that? Like that is literally the thing that I would like to have more attention to be able to spend with them. And it's great to be able, like, why would I want a robot to do that? I don't know. I just don't. And also there's this like notion that I feel like a lot of these people building these AI systems, a lot of these tech bros are just devaluing what their partner had been doing for a long time. Right. And they're like, oh, wow, my wife used to plan out this birthday party. I can program that out in a bash script in an hour. Right. Like you, all of the value you brought, all of the mental sort of like overhead of what you had to do to plan this. I sat down with my wife 2 nights ago. We try to theme summers for our kids, at least my youngest kid. And we're like, hey, what movies should they watch throughout summer? Like we could just like, they can watch whatever they want, but like if we give them a suggestion, it might be themed with something we want to do that week, either an event, or we actually were planning out like days of the week, like special days. They're all like these fake holidays or whatever, like National Hot Dog Day or something. So like, oh, on that day, you should watch Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs because a guy has a hot dog bun, right? And like, it's just funny to like get these. So we literally went through every day of summer and we picked a movie that went through the day of the week, and like I got value out of it. And then I literally, after we planned it, I asked AI, hey, plan this out. And I went through like 4 or 5 iterations and none of it was even close. It was just pick like the top 50 Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks movie. I'm like, this wasn't good. This was a thing. It gave me a list, but it wasn't what I wanted. And so this is like, I'm trying to figure out where I want to focus my attention and where I get value out of doing the work myself. And that's what I'm doing with AI, is just trying to figure out where does it fit. And sometimes most of the time it's just like, it's coding. It's like, hey, I don't want to write this bash script right now. And I know I could copy and paste it from the old stuff. I have enough, but like, I don't want to pay attention to this right now. And it's low value for me. I'm not going to get rewarded if this cron job actually, works the first time. It's like, okay, we can keep going with it.
Yeah. I have found it to be very helpful doing the kind of low value stuff, right? Like you're going to be thinking of some little piece of like a paragraph of text that needs to be written or something, right? So like a YouTube video description, like look at this subtitle file, give me a cool YouTube description, boom, with tags, right? Right, yeah, and it's like, okay, done, right? So that to me is cool because it gets me, out of the writer's block space and onto doing the next thing of value. But yeah, I agree. Replacing like the valuable human interactions is not what I want AI to do. I actually want AI to remove the boring crap so I can have more valuable human interactions.
It's the next level of, remember when that meme about how AI was supposed to like free us from the drudge work and then
stealing the art.
in the next frame, the AI is the one doing the art, and we're the ones like still flipping burgers or whatever. This is the next level of that. But you have given me an amazing business idea. Guys, we need to create a little AI flying drone that will follow our kids around and just film them 24/7 and trim out
Big
all of
clips.
Yeah, just create a sizzle reel of my child's first year.
And you'll only see it on your TikTok feed. And you're just like, oh, my kid did something today.
Oh, look, my baby's first steps. Let me get some likes. Oh my God.
That made me feel ill, Chris.
Thank you. Somebody's gonna roll with that. You know that there's somebody in Palo Alto right now writing that idea down, going,
yes, write that down.
And if you are an awful human being. I'm saying that right now. Stop writing that down.
Yeah. So what I've been doing is actually been more, maybe more technically interesting, is messing around with MCP, right?
Yes.
At my job, my CTO was doing some MCP work, and effectively you just provide an LLM the ability to like interact with things. So what he did was, using some command line tools, he could say, all right, Claude desktop, you can talk to this cloud, right? And right now you can do things like, what are all the VMs? Which ones are powered off, right? Not very exciting, but what I think will be interesting is if you can get it to where it actually understands things, right? Like, how do I need to set up this virtual network to get internet connectivity, or right? So anyways, that's what I have been working on with AI. And it's still barely more than just the computer equivalent of teaching a dog to jump through like a burning hoop. But, it's something. It's something interesting to do. Anyways, I appreciate the rant, Justin. That was great. I liked it.
It's on my mind. Yeah.
You should still write that blog post.
I encourage you to do that.
Yeah, for sure. So API driven Linux. When you sign up for the show, I think the kind of the phrase you used was, what would Linux be like without a shell, without Bash, and it was only an API?
Yeah.
So what were you thinking about that? Was that like an awkward transition?
That's fine.
Okay.
The AI probably could have done it better, but
we don't smooth segues are not in our repertoire. That's not how we do things around here. So
no.
What do you think about chocolate? Never mind.
Yeah.
Make the most abrupt segue you can. It was like, hey.
So API driven Linux, what's that about?
So I work at Sidero Labs, and we make a Linux distro called Talos Linux. And the idea of the Linux distro is, what if a Linux distro only did one thing, only does Kubernetes, nothing else? If you have a single purpose, basically an appliance at that point, where you say like, oh, if this only does one thing, what can we do with it? What do we need? And people have been doing things like this for a long time, right? Like if I look back even 20 plus years, I used to install webmin. Remember the web interface to like manage your Linux server, and you're like, oh, this webmin is really cool, right? Like I don't have to SSH every time. I could do this from another computer, and I can click, and I can even have like scripts run. And I can say, oh, what if I go to the website and I just like say, run that script right now, and I could do something, right? It was really cool back in the day. And it's kind of the same idea, where you're like, what if I had a place to go, or a network endpoint to call, whether it's me clicking a button in a website or an API with curl, that then goes and does something for me on this Linux server. And most of my experience as a sysadmin and system engineer was always trying to make Linux servers do like fewer things. Like, you know what? Like if it's more reliable if I take this Red Hat or Ubuntu or something, I make it do one thing that I want. And I'm just going to say like cloud init or config management or whatever it is, turn it into something that I think it should be. Right. And then it's to me, that box is the DNS server, or it's the storage node, or it's the ESXi host or something, right? Like it's all Linux that's just doing one thing that I think of. But in all those cases,
no, sorry.
Yeah, ESXi, like that was like, I mean, ESXi is just a Linux box that does one thing. Right.
No, that's just a big callback to our roots.
Yeah.
You said that, and I was like, oh, it is basically just a tiny little Linux box hanging out.
And like the ESXi like idea is like it installs a Linux that you don't have any access to.
Right.
The only way to interact with it is from vSphere. right? And it's just doing, I think it was SOAP, right? Like it had a SOAP API that it was doing like
Did at one
XML
point.
calls. Yeah. So it was like it had like an agent that would run and it would expose some things that it could do. And then all of the calls to start up a VM, to do whatever, this is just happening over an API for VMs. And
pour one out for the homies.
Right? It's like and that's what we did, and like that was an appliance and we didn't have any access to. So Talos Linux is doing that for Kubernetes in a lot of ways, where we say like, hey, what if all we do is Kubernetes and we just start from scratch and we say we're not taking Ubuntu or Red Hat or whatever and stripping it down and saying we don't need these pieces. We just say let's get the Linux kernel and write in a init system and just run Kubernetes. And what would that look like? And in a lot of ways, it looks like the webmin days of I have an interface over a network that I can do things with. And in other ways, it looks like an invisible box that does work like an ESXi host, right? Like I never logged into ESXi. Like I only ever troubleshooted it and did things through vSphere. And that's kind of the idea here is like, what if we make more of those things that are just single purpose, that only do one thing and aren't these long processes of trying to strip down things. They're not Packer builds. They're not Ansible runs. They're not this stuff that's like, oh, what if we get it to good enough? It's like, no. Right. We're going to start literally from scratch and see where we get.
So would that need SSH capabilities at all?
There's no SSH binary. Doesn't exist on the system. There's no, I found out yesterday, which I don't know why I didn't think about this. We don't have an Etsy password file. Like there's not even like a user defined. Like you can't, there's nothing about the host that says like you can log into this. There's no bash binary. There's no shell at all. And there's no SSH. Like what are you going to do to it? Like the only thing that runs is the kernel starts the init system, which in most cases is like systemd. In our case, it runs an API. Like now everything we do for installs, disk formatting, what security, like we give it TLS certificates to secure the connections, all that stuff just goes, we make an API call. And it does everything else for you.
And I know nothing about Talos, so I'm walking into this a little bit.
That's why I'm here. It's great.
the vCenter analog in this world is what?
In our case, it'd probably be Omni, which is the product we sell. Okay, because it's like it's the vCenter sort of like you want to do a bunch of Kubernetes clusters. That's where you would manage it easier. You don't have to. We're just calling the Talos API, right? The Talos API can do all of this stuff, but we started finding that there are pieces that have to be outside of the operating system. You can't do all of your orchestration from inside the OS because the OS doesn't know network segmentation, or it doesn't know if all of the database nodes are ready. It doesn't know things. So somewhere outside, usually that's a person. Like when I'm setting up a vSphere cluster, I go boot up my ESXi nodes. I say I want 5 of them, and then I start joining them into vSphere. And I'm the orchestrator as an admin that's going in and doing that work. You can do that with Talos. You can run as many Talos nodes as you want that just do Kubernetes, and you can be the orchestrator for it and say like, oh, I know all the IP addresses. I know which clusters are where. I know how to manage authentication, all that sort of stuff. The Omni side is more of the vSphere. You want single sign-on for your users. You don't want to memorize all the IP addresses or keep a spreadsheet, that sort of stuff. It's just a little more dynamic on how are we creating clusters, where are we creating clusters, how's networking work. It does some of that outside of the OS orchestration.
Gotcha. Neat.
Interesting.
Hold on. Room housekeeping is here. I'll be right back.
Have them make the bed in the background. It'd be great.
I have worked from a hotel room, or even just sat there and played video games, like on a day off of travel, while the cleaners moved around me, and I felt terrible.
I'm just gonna go. It's okay.
All right, we're back.
Yeah, but I mean that's kind of the idea of like the thing we've been doing for a very long time. It just has a new form of whether it's Webmin or Packer or Ansible or whatever. Like we take all these general purpose things and we make them understandable for the humans that maintain them. And we say, like we just say like, that only does this, and we do it in the cloud and we do it on-prem, we do it wherever, right? It's not unique to one environment or something. And Talos just happened to be the thing where it's like, well, what if it was just Kubernetes?
Very interesting.
So going a little bit larger, has the decisions made by Broadcom, have they affected business on your end in any way, pro or con? Like people evacuating VMware as quickly as humanly possible?
I would say in general pro, just because it made people reevaluate the value they were getting from the system. Because vSphere is a very valuable piece of software. It has all the integrations. It does a lot of stuff that a lot of people need.
It's very mature.
It's very mature. It's stable. It has been around for a very long time, and a lot of people know it, right? Like the training in the industry, like, has already been there. People for decades now, people have been using vSphere and they understand it. So when someone comes in and says, "Hey, I need a vSphere admin," you can find one because they've been around for a little while. But the value hasn't changed, but the price has changed. And now people are reevaluating, like, how much value is this worth? Right? Like, is this actually worth 3 times? And if, in a lot of ways, like, if it started 3 times as much, would people still have paid for it at the beginning? Probably, because they didn't know there was a lower price. Like, the only reason this is a problem now is because they raised the price and they said, hey, the thing that you got last year, the amount of value you got used to cost this much, and now it costs this much. It's the same amount of value you're getting, but it costs 3 times as much. And so it was like, now they're like, well, I know this used to be cheaper, so I don't want to buy it anymore, just out of principle, right? Like, I didn't buy eggs in the US for a month or so because they were just so expensive. I'm like, it's still an egg. Like, I can still just, like, it's still breakfast. Like, it's still like the same value I got a month ago from that same egg eating breakfast is now 3 times as much. Do I want to buy the eggs now? Like, probably not. I'm just going to go without eggs. And that was fine for me. vSphere is like an integral part for a lot of these people, and it runs these VMs. And so the thing that they're reevaluating is like, how much value do I get from this? How much do I need to retrain people? Is there an alternative? And they're looking at plenty of things that do like a one-to-one replacement of, do I want hypervisors? Do I want Proxmox? Do I want, something along those lines? It's like, I can take the vSphere skills that look like this and I can put them over here, and I maybe can pay the same amount or less by going with someone else. There's alternatives. How much integrations, how much work am I doing for that? Or there's the folks that are like, oh, this is now an opportunity for me to like rethink all of this.
Oh yeah.
Like, maybe I don't want VMs everywhere. Maybe I want to go to containers, or I want to go to cloud, or I want to do something else, go to bare metal, right? Like, there's options for them that they never really considered because those options were a lot of work.
Yeah.
And this isn't the type of work that I can ask AI to plan out and say, when I wake up, please tell me which plan's the best, right? And which is funny because, like, I just read an article yesterday, like, Amazon has this new like transition thing, and I worked at Amazon for 4.5 years or so, and they've always had transition tools. So like, hey, help you move to the cloud, and they're like, we now have one that works on AI, and everything in the article was like, we will plan your migration. I'm like, that's not going to work. I know for sure that's not going to work. And when I finally got to like the details of what they're actually doing, is they are taking policies in your vSwitches and changing those to VPC policies, and then your access to IAM, and that's it. Like, they're just translating those 2 things and then roughly giving you a diagram of how it works. And I was like, that's not the picture. That's not what the whole thing of what's going on.
No.
Right. Because most of those vSphere instances were set up long before these rules existed, and so people don't have any rules set at all. It's just wide open. It's just like, oh, it's just like star admin, right? Like, everyone can do everything and every network can talk to everyone. So it's like, there's no policy there. Like, they might say, we're going to translate all of these apps into individual policies. I'm like, they're all just star IAM. It doesn't matter, right? Like, I could do that with a bash script. But at the end of the day, they're like, oh, we can transition and we can save you all this time to begin execution. I'm like, you don't want to start execution. You want to start planning as long as possible to make you sure you find all the edge cases first.
Right.
And the thing I usually found at Amazon was anyone using those transition tools were not the people creating the software, right? These were admins. They were running software. They didn't know necessarily how to architect these things.
They just knew how to wire the.
They knew how to wire them together. They can click it together. They can find the guide to say like, oh, this is the thing I want. They can probably find, some troubleshooting with help from support or something, work through some of the problems. But in most cases, they were I don't want to say less technical, but they were the less technology driven. in that technology was just there as like a means to the end. And if they didn't need the technology, they wouldn't use it at all. And so they're looking for the lowest dollar everywhere they go. And they're not going to invest the time to do the planning anyway. So you might as well just have AI break it.
So speaking of more of the technical aspects of this, if you're going with like a no shell OS, like you very minimalist methods of ingress, how does debugging happen? How does figuring out what's going bump in the night in the operating? Walk me through that.
How do you do it? What does SSH do?
Allows you to show, it gives you observability into what's happening in your processes.
Gives you data, right? At some reason, you can run a command that gives you some data, because even those front ends of data, the TCP dump and the PS commands or whatever, they're all just like they're looking at files, right? Like they're just front ends to something else that you don't necessarily know the lower levels of. Oh, I could cat this file in proc to get that same information, or I can run the du command and I get that information and I could do some math or whatever, right? And so like all of those front ends of shell commands are front ends to data that exists in the kernel.
Okay.
And so at the end of the day, the thing I want is that thing, the data on a remote system, to show up in my terminal. So like SSH like opens a socket and then like opens a TCP connection and like opens another socket and like creates bash and then like wires the output of bash to my terminal. If I curl a webhook, it does roughly the same. Like all those technologies are basically the same. Like I get a TCP socket, I like query something and it sends data back to my terminal. And so for something like Talos, like we have TCP dump endpoints where you can just stream a TCP dump over an API.
Okay.
It's just a front end for the data. So like all of those situations are kind of the same technologies. I just don't have to manage users and binaries and all this stuff on the other end. It's just an API endpoint that say all you want is the data to be able to ask questions. And so if you're looking for like which disk is full, what processes are running, all those things are just API endpoints for us. It's a different front end to the data that exists from the kernel.
So from an adoption perspective, I'm trying to think of like some of the different use cases and everything. From an adoption perspective, are you seeing where are the largest number of people coming from? Startups, Linux nerds, enterprises? Like where are the folks that are like going, oh yeah, give me more of this?
I'd say the most vocal advocates, like by quantity, is home labbers.
Not by volume, but by quantity.
But I don't want to say volume. I mean, maybe the United States just has more volume typically than some other places. But like by quantity, is home labbers absolutely love it. And we get like literally like I go on Reddit occasionally, and like anytime anyone asks, what should I run on my home lab for Kubernetes or what should I run on bare metal? Someone else has replied. The first thing, and it's almost always the top vote, is Talos Linux. Because they're coming from K3S or Minikube or MicroK8s or something else. And in every case, all of those things are like, oh, Talos Linux is not the same as a K3S, because K3S is a binary that gives you Kubernetes.
Right.
Everything below that, you still have to manage in certain ways. You still have to get the Ubuntu system or the Red Hat system or whatever, and then you run the service. Talos Linux is a Linux distro. It just so happens that it pulls vanilla Kubernetes from the distro's releases. And so we made managing Linux easier, but it only does Kubernetes. So like when you do an upgrade, you make an API call. You make literally one API call that says, hey, do an upgrade to this version. It just goes and downloads the file system, installs it to the disk, and reboots. It's like, oh, there you go. That was it. Like I don't have to do all the maintenance stuff. So people often come in and say like, this is from home labbers, like I don't have to maintain any of this anymore. It's all, I don't even think about it. On the paying customer side, we get a lot of European customers, people in the EU that need data privacy, that don't run in big clouds, that have bare metal infrastructure. So those are like the cases where people like love this model that fits at like a larger scale.
Gotcha.
What about the actual image running on the containers themselves? Can you run Talos inside those?
Talos,
like you would with an Alpine or whatever else?
Yeah, you can, but in that case, it's only the init system. It's only the like our PID1 is a Go binary that we wrote that runs containers.
Mhm.
And so you can run that, like the getting started guide is like a Docker run Talos basically. And it just runs similar to like a kind cluster where it's running Kubernetes inside of containers. It just so happens to have Talos's PID1 inside those containers. You can do it. You lose a lot of the features of what you get with like a full operating system. Like when you actually isolate the kernel, you can do different things to it. So you can call the APIs and do different things. You can add extensions is what we call for, like, they're kind of like packages, but like drivers and whatnot to say like, oh, how do I get my NVIDIA card working? I'm not going to do that in a container. I do want a full OS with a kernel so that's isolated at some boundary. And so doing that, you can do it in VMs locally. We have like a QEMU stack that also does a similar thing where it's like, oh, I actually want VM isolation. You lose a lot of those benefits too, where it's like, what does a reboot look like? What does an upgrade look like? Can I validate some of these things? In containers, none of that happens. It's just run the process and then run more containers. It does work. Right. It's fine. It kind of gives a limited set of all the value that I think a Linux distro brings. Because like if I'm running Ubuntu in a container, all I'm running is actually bash inside of chroot. So it's just like, oh, it's just like the Ubuntu file system with bash, but I don't know how to do a upgrade and a reboot and all this stuff. I can install packages, but that's about it. With a read-only file system, like you're not doing a whole lot with it. It's just like another Kubernetes.
I was just thinking about kubectl exec, right? Like if I wanted to do an interactive terminal with a container running Talos, like what that would even look like. And
you can do that on running like full systems of Talos, right? Like that doesn't need, like not in a container, because that's all above the operating system. Right. So you can even do what I wrote a blog post last year of like how to like SSH into Talos is basically run like a kube control debug, because you can run a debug command against a node instead of against a pod. And that just runs a pod at the OS level and mounts the OS file system into it. So you can get a shell that is running on a node. But again, it's like there's not a whole lot running. There's not a lot of processes. The file system's read only. There's no package manager. There's not a lot you can do.
That's very interesting. It kind of hurts my head a little bit.
So that's usually, I mean, like I feel like that's usually where people start, and they started the same way with Kubernetes, right? When you first ran Kubernetes, when I first ran Kubernetes, I ran a kube control, run Nginx, and it was a deployment. Like I downloaded this YAML, and it's like I thought it broke. I thought it wasn't working at all. Because I'm like, and especially at the time, kube control didn't tell me that like deployment ran. Like now it says you like what it created. Like it just returned, and I'm like, well, that sucks. Like this whole thing's broken. Like I don't get it. And then I like, well, let me query this, like what's going on. I'm like, wait, I have 3 Nginx pods running. How's that possible? Like this was like 2 seconds ago. This isn't possible to do it that fast. And as I explored it more, I'm like, oh, actually, this did the thing that I expected. And it just did it so faster and beyond my expectations of what this should look like that I couldn't believe it. And I had the same experience. I actually found Talos when I was working at Disney doing Kubernetes on-prem. This was 2017, 2016, something like that, 2016. And it was when Andrew started the project. I was the first person to email him about this project when he started it and launched it on Hacker News, where I'm like, that's amazing. I want to build something like this. I'm doing it with CoreOS at Disney. And we stayed in touch. And that's how I kind of knew about the company. And when I first ran Talos, I'm like, okay, do an install. And like the command just returned to me, and I'm like, this is broken. Like nothing works. Like this is impossible that it worked this fast. And I go and I look at the node, and I'm like, wait, it says it's up. Like this couldn't have been. And so like it's the same idea when I'm doing these like traditional Linux installs. I'm like, well, yeah, it's going to take me 20, 30 minutes to like go do an install. And even if it's automated, even with a kickstart file and all that other stuff, I still got to get everything in the right place and stuff like that. And this one, like I just like boot off a USB drive, made one API call. And I'm like, what happened? Like, what is going on? I was like, this was like 10 seconds later. Like the system's up. This can't be. Like, there's no way this is installed to disk.
Right. Interesting.
So from a community contribution perspective, like is there a vibrant community contributing to it? Are there specific areas that are need? Are you in that space, or are you more on the commercial side?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open, like everything in Talos is open source. Like it's an open source operating system. Everything about it, like we have to keep that open source. Like we don't want to ever change. Like I know there's lots of people ask about license changes and stuff like that. And I'm like, hey, we have a viable business option here with this Omni thing that we sell. And that's totally fine. Like if you don't win, and it's a bustle license, and it was launched as a bustle license, and so it's business use. You have to pay us. If you run it at home labs, we get lots of home lab users. Like, this is amazing. Like I can do all of my Kubernetes clusters. I'm like, why do you have 8 Kubernetes clusters in your home lab? Like this is, so some people really like it, but it's like, yeah, you can run it in non-production environments and just run. It's a single container and it just runs, right? And so like I spent a lot of my time on that contribution side, on the documentation, on really education is a lot of it, right? Because it is a different idea, similar to what I was doing at Amazon, educating people about Kubernetes. Why would you need this? Why do you not need this? Like telling, I convinced more people to not use Kubernetes at Amazon than to use Kubernetes, right? There's so many people that came to me, I'm using Kubernetes. Like, what are you doing? Like, what's your operational like excellence?
My 5 users on my website I needed to build a containerized back. Like, no, stop, get away.
Yeah, no, and like I kept pushing people to other services because I'm like, you have 2 admins right now that manage 10 boxes, and you do upgrades once a year. You do not want Kubernetes, especially not EKS, because EKS is requiring 3 upgrades a year, which adds risk to the whole thing. Like, let's go ahead and like remove some of this. Like, you don't need this side of it. Like, you should, if you want to do this, you should have a problem that you're trying to address. You need to move faster. You need to scale more. You want to reduce some complexity, whatever it is, right? There's all these reasons that are valid, but a lot of people came to me with like, well, it's a thing. I should use it, right? I'm like, no, like you don't need to. It's okay.
It exists. I should incorporate it, right? You're like, no.
That's rule 37. If it exists, you've got to install it.
and to some degree, like everyone should install something once, right? Just don't put it in production. It's totally fine. Like I've installed so many things. I'm like, what does this do? I've installed MCP and Olama and all these like different things. I'm like, I'm gonna do it once and see what it's like. Do I need that? No. If I do, like if I have a problem, I'm like, oh, this does solve that problem. Cool. Maybe I'll see where it works. But if I installed it and I'm like, actually, no, this isn't for me. It's okay. It's not solving my problem. Doesn't mean it's bad.
Right. So on that end, then what is like the one misconception about Talos that you would like to clear up for the audience?
I guess it's the SSH problem, because so many people come to me and they say, what happens if I lose access to the API? I say, what would you do if you lost access to SSH?
Right.
Because the same idea, same technologies, same sort of like remote management sort of thing. They're like, but we all got really attached to SSH as like the thing that I have to have, because I assume that as the only way it can be done. And once you kind of like can break some of those assumptions, like, oh, actually it's a TCP socket with a certificate and I get data back and forth. It's interactive. I can do a lot of this stuff different ways, and just like Webmin, right? Like I've been doing Webmin for so long, and Webmin had APIs, and Red Hat has a Copilot now, and there's all these like new ways of kind of doing the same old stuff, but no one kind of went all the way to the extreme of like, what if it was only an API? What is missing from that API? And usually it's debug, right? Like Webmin had no way to like, you could view logs maybe, but I couldn't like interactively interrogate the system. And by adding some of that stuff to our APIs as we were building it, we're like, oh, what's missing? I was like, oh, you know what? I need to see network traffic. I just need to see what's happening on the system. So I should have a TCP dump endpoints. I should have a SS or a see me all open ports, right? Like I want to see all the open ports, what's listening, what's not. All that sort of stuff needs to be there. The base system though is almost nothing, right? Like all of that stuff comes from Kubernetes. All the complexity things that break usually are like the Kubernetes layer on top of it, because that's a bunch of stuff. And when you boot a Talos node, it runs 3 processes. The entire system is running in 3 processes. And it's the init, it's the init system. It's UDEV for watching hardware changes if you're plugging into USB or changing network or something like that. And it was in a container runtime. That's it. It's the whole thing.
So if you ran this as a VM and you looked at the VM console, what would you see?
And before you actually provision Kubernetes, you see those 3 processes.
But
like what do you see like at the console? I see.
Yes.
The init system also can run an optional like local terminal console, which is sort of like an HTOP interface. It's a TUI, which is it's just read only. And so there's like 3 tabs on it. And so there's one that's like it gives you some like just stats about what's being used, like how much memory, how much CPU. It gives you your dmessage logs on the bottom, and it shows you like some network configuration. And so like that's the main console for it. The second page is more into the actual processes, shows you graphs and stuff like that, all drawn in a TUI. And the third page, depending on where you're running it, would be like network configuration, where you actually could say like, hey, I need to set up a DNS server, or I need to set up a static IP address, or I need to set up a host name. And that's the only interaction you can do at the local console. Because if you start it and you have no network, you would have no SSH, but you also would have, in this case, no API. And so that's like the bare minimum of what people kind of need to kind of get it running.
Interesting.
So that's your local console. Yeah.
I am going to check this out. So yeah, y'all are on GitHub. You're licensed with the Mozilla license. I was only interested in the license because of work-related things. So my company offers a VMware conversion tool that converts things from VMware. And we use the MariaDB, the business source license, right? And there's been a lot of internal discussion, like, are we open source or not? And it's like, we're on GitHub. You can see all the source, but
source available.
Is it technically open source or right? So
yeah. And that's like for us, that's Omni, right? Like it's a business source license and the source is available. You can see it. And we actually did that mostly for the customers that were asking us and said, hey, I need to be able to see this code. I want to possibly contribute to it. I need to be able to just inspect what's going on under the hood. I'm like, okay, well, here's the code, right? Like you can't, if you're running it and you are running it in a production environment, the license says you have to pay us. We don't do any tracking on it. It's like, if you're doing that, like that's your risk, like a legal risk of like, you are going against these license terms. And if it's found or whatever, like, hey, you didn't pay us for that. Like you need to pay us. That's what lawyers are for. Right. Like that's just like an agreement of the source license in any case, right? Like that's Red Hat. And that's all these things. Like if you are running this in a business and you don't pay for this, for the license, what the license demands, that's a legal issue.
That's right. It's very interesting. So how can folks get started with Talos Linux?
I usually say, like, if you have an old computer, like an old desktop, an old laptop, of Raspberry Pis for like SBCs are a little iffy because they're all weird. Like all SBCs are weird in that they're not like full computers. They don't initialize hardware the same way. I learned that the Raspberry Pi boots from the GPU. Like the first thing that gets power is the GPU, and then it like enumerates all this. I'm like, that is crazy. So it's just like if you have an old computer, old laptop, if you want to just run it in the cloud, whatever, like you can just go like spin it up and it's super boring because it just like it presents you this API and you're like, okay, well now I need to generate a configuration which has like secrets and stuff, and I just send that to the API.
Right.
Like, now what? Well, now you have a Kubernetes cluster. Like, what do you want? Like what do you want to do next? Like did you want a Kubernetes cluster? If no, then you shouldn't be looking at Talos. Like that's all it does. And so if you want a Kubernetes cluster with like the minimal amount of maintenance long term, then it's a great option, because not only is it like the fast to getting started is one thing, but the long-term maintenance of it is where I usually say there's most value, because people that have been doing Kubernetes for a couple of years are like, I can't upgrade it because it's too difficult. I don't know if the OS is going to break. I'm like 3 versions behind on Ubuntu. I don't know what any of this stuff. I have to just basically rebuild from scratch and then migrate stuff over because there's just too much risk to go through the upgrade process. And for us, it was like, no, like we actually do all the checks for like, is that a valid upgrade from this version of Kubernetes to that version? Are you calling any APIs in Kubernetes that get deprecated or removed? We're not going to let you upgrade. We know what Kubernetes needs. We know what the OS needs. So like all of those things become super safe, where it's just like, oh, the maintenance side of it becomes, you just let it run in the background on bare metal or somewhere. It's just like, yeah, it's just a Kubernetes cluster. It should be super boring. And by integrating that with all the way down to the Linux kernel, like the OS itself, it's just like, yeah, you just don't have to think about it. It's great.
Yeah. I feel like there's a marketing person somewhere at your company that cringes when you say it's super boring. We should ask AI for a better word on that.
I mean, well, like speaking of attention, right? Like, where do you want to spend your attention? The reason Talos was created was because Andrew was super frustrated. He was working at a company and he just kept managing Linux servers, doing all the users, all the config management, and then he'd do it again in Kubernetes. He's like, I do this again? Like, I have to do this twice. Like, what if this was just one thing? Like, what if I didn't have to pay attention to both of these things? And instead of making a Kubernetes distro, he made a Linux distro that does Kubernetes.
This is possibly a very dumb question, but Are there any different ways that Talos handles like network policy within Kubernetes different than would be done with like a Ubuntu distribution? So like if I had a tool like Kyverno or something like that had like, the actual ingress and egress policies between the pods or the containers, like is there something different that Talos does?
We are usually at bleeding edge for some of this stuff. So like we switched to NF tables earlier than pretty much every other distro. And so there's some of those things that act differently. That would be the different sides of it. But everything above like the Kubernetes is just vanilla Kubernetes. I would say that the like interaction is sometimes, which would be same on any OS, is if you're setting like a firewall on the host, you set a policy in Kubernetes, and you're like, oh, the host says don't allow this because we have ingress rules in Talos that says, oh, only allow traffic from these IP addresses or something. And then you go into Kubernetes and you're like, oh, I allow traffic from these pods or something. Like you have to marry those somewhere. Sometimes those conflict. Sometimes they just ignore it because NF tables, like the way the chain is like, I found a match first. The Talos rules are down here, so I'm not going to block it. My Kyverno rules are going to take over. So at some point you're layering it and they don't interact. At some point they might conflict in that one says allow, one says deny, and it's not doing the thing you expected.
The perennial rule stacking issue at different layers.
Yeah. So we do offer some of that stuff, especially in like, we have a lot of edge customers. Like this is a small footprint thing. We're going to go deploy it somewhere. It's a hostile environment. I do not know what else is on this network. I only want network traffic to happen from this management IP or from this like VPN, network interface or something like that. And so we're like, hey, we're just going to firewall everything off and then only allow traffic here. And then once Kubernetes is up, then you can like ease up now here's the services I'm running at the store or restaurant or whatever it is. Those cases are like, again, Kubernetes policy that you're allowed, but at the base level, like before Talos's provision and Kubernetes is running, you want to firewall it off.
Nice. I finally found the meme that I was looking for. When you were asking about how do you make one, I was like, wait a minute, I've seen this before, and I need to.
I can send you my picture, which is literally the same thing. It's 5 HP nodes, which way back in the day, man, 2012, 2011, I had some Bitcoin. I bought Bitcoin. It was like for my birthday because I was interested in the technology. I'm like, what is this Bitcoin thing? Like, I want to see what it's like to actually, what would it take to buy it? And so I bought 0.033 Bitcoin or something like that. I spent like $200 and Bitcoin went way down for a long, long time. And then it came back up and it was back up to like 250. I'm like, great, I'm out. I'm selling this thing. I don't want to be involved or associated with Bitcoin at all. I was interested in the technology, not all the scamming. Like I just
was exactly my journey too. I bought a little bit of it, watched it crater. I was like, okay, well this sucks. Then it came back up, and I was like, okay, I'm out. Yeah. When I watched that,
and people ask me today, like, oh, don't you regret it? I'm like, no, because I sold all that Bitcoin and I bought 5 HP nodes and I built Kubernetes clusters. I built Kubernetes clusters at home, and you know what that enabled me to do? Is get a better job. Right? The thing that I actually got was I went from making $100,000 at Disney to making $300,000 at Amazon because I learned Kubernetes, and I made that every year, and that was great because I was just like, actually, I don't care what Bitcoin price is doing. I invested in myself, and I can now carry all of that investment forever because I'm still alive, right? And as long as I'm still alive, that still works for me.
This is my favorite meme as I'm screwing up the layout on the screen. I actually love this a lot. And now I've saved it on my computer so I can find it again next time.
That's good.
Nice.
Sorry, Chris. You're probably wondering what in the hell is going on.
No. If we didn't have at least 2 or 3 technical screw ups per episode, then it would not be
not a live stream.
Yeah. It would not be us. You'd be watching a professional show.
We'll clean it up in prod.
In post. This is prod, Chris.
I always screw up dev, QA, and prod anyway, so whatever.
Awesome. Well, we're coming up to the top of our time, Justin. Got any last thoughts, or want to let folks know how they could find you?
Yeah, I mean,
if you want to be found.
I'm pretty well on I'm justingarrison.com has all my links.
Okay.
I'm mostly on Blue Sky now just because that's the thing that is the app that's on my home screen still. That's probably where I spend most of my time. But in general, like, I mean, I'm interested about how other people think about these things. I haven't seen anyone else go to this extreme and kind of take the next leap of like, what would this actually take to make Linux smaller and usable. Because when we think about, I mean, the title of this, like simplicity at scale, right? Like the only way to make software simple is to run less of it. Right? Like like simple systems are reliable, and then you're like CTOs, like here's the 8,000 crons we need to run and all the security agents and all this stuff. Like, wait, nothing is simple about this anymore. Like I could diagram something for you that's simple, but once you start adding all this baggage on top, you're like, this isn't simple. And by the only way to make it simple is to take stuff out, to actually like remove things from the system, and like this isn't required anymore. I don't actually need this. I don't need SSH. I don't need a user account. I don't need SE password. Like that's the stuff I just don't need it to run Kubernetes. So, okay, well, Kubernetes is still complex. Like there's still complexity in that, but is it a simple system? Like if it runs less, then I think that's the actual like true meaning of like a simple system, is just there's less to think about. There's less that is even possible to break because it doesn't exist.
Right. Much like EV cars versus ICE cars, there's significantly fewer moving parts in an electric vehicle. Therefore, there's fewer options for things to break. It still has a motor, still goes forward, still has four wheels, but there's not hundreds of thousands of little tiny metal widgets that can snap over and turn sideways.
As someone who thought I would be a mechanic for my entire life, I was like training, I was taking classes to be Toyota certified, all this stuff. I love cars.
Were you
I'm
really?
like, oh, absolutely. I was taking design courses. I was porting, polishing heads. I was doing all that stuff.
Wow.
I got my toolbox back here. It's like, I still, I like the last oil change was the first time I didn't do my own oil change. And I felt like a failure because I'm like, my entire life I've been doing my brakes, my oil, any easy repairs, I would do them myself. And now I'm like, you know what? Like I don't need all of this fluid. I don't actually need everything that's in an internal combustion engine. I know how most of it works. I don't want to know how it works. I don't want to have to maintain it. I just wish that it would go away. And EV cars make a lot of sense. We're like, actually, is it a more complex system? It's a more hidden system. I can't see the moving parts. I can't necessarily touch everything because it's software, right? Like being able to, I'm locked out of that system and I can't access it. Mechanical stuff, it's really hard to lock someone out of an internal combustion engine because like I can just literally undo the bolts. But an EV system, I can't decompile the software and see how it works. And so like that's the trade-off here of like we move some of that complexity into that software side by greatly simplifying the mechanical side.
I literally just had this conversation with an old presenter on the show, Eric Shanks, on the floor of Red Hat just now. He's over at Portworx now. And he was talking about one of his new younger architects, and he was explaining something, and then the RAID array, blah, 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 something. And the person just like deer in the headlights, RAID?
No.
I was like,
wow.
Oh, no.
Oh, you sweet summer child.
They don't need to know what a redundant array of inexpensive disks is anymore. They don't need to know what the +1 striping bit parity is. And I can rattle that. I unfortunately can still 15 years later can rattle that off the top of my head. And it's the same goes with, I mean, kids these days, they got it so good. Okay, I'm done.
It is weird because I have been in those places where I realized that the person that I was talking to, like within a specific space of technology, I had likely forgotten more than they had ever learned. Right? Like that is a weird place to be. It's like, holy crap! How did this happen? You know?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, this has been great, y'all. I don't know about you, but I've got work to get back to.
Justin,
what do you got going on, man?
Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.